the stem stitch. The stem stitch is actually the opposite of the back stitch. So if I turned over my back stitch, on the back it actually is a stem stitch. With a stem stitch, I'm working from left to right, but my needle's pointing to the left. It would be the opposite if you're left-handed. So each stitch overlaps the previous stitch by a half. So I'm going to take my needle 2 steps forward, so 1, 2, and come up 1 step back. So in the middle of those 2 points. So I've come up here, I've gone down there, and I've come back up in the middle. The thread is below my needle, and I pull it through flat onto the fabric. Lay your thread down underneath and go 2 steps forward. So the first step is the end of your first stitch, and then another equal step forward, and then come back into the same hole or very close to the end of the stitch before. Thread under the needle, pull it through. Continue that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, pull through, and see how as I'm bringing my needle through, I'm laying the thread under the line or under the needle so it's ready, and I can just pull my needle straight through. If I didn't do that, I would just have to take an extra step of putting that under the needle each time. So getting into the habit of, as you pull through, laying it down, ready for the next stitch. So the stem stitch gives a slightly thicker line look than the back stitch. The back stitch is a little finer, the stem stitch is a little chunkier. Remember, each stitch is sitting halfway over the stitch before, so you're in effect getting 4 strands of thread when I'm using 2, so it gives you the thicker line. You still need to place your needle in the middle of your drawn line or your marked transfer line each time the needle goes in and out. It's still directly in the center of your line, not at the top or the bottom, directly in the center, and then the stitches will lay nicely around the curve. If your thread was to go above the needle each time, and sometimes if you're doing an outer curve or if you're going the opposite direction, it sits nicer to have your thread above the needle, and this is called an outline stitch as opposed to a stem stitch. It's pretty much exactly the same, just threads going above the needle instead of below each time. Whichever you use is fine, just don't switch halfway through because you'll see a single thread stitch here and that will look different on your solid line. So that's a stem stitch, and it's used quite often for stems of florals or just outlines of shapes where you want a slightly heavier line than the back stitch. And that's the stem stitch.